The expressed views, statements, and opinions by the guests on the Risk Advisor program made either during the show or on the corresponding social media and blog outlets are not necessarily the view or opinions of Baxter Productions, Inc. or any of its affiliates, associates, or others who are part of this production. Information provided during this broadcast is for news purposes only and does not constitute a remedy for any of the discussed risks presented.
Did you ever wonder what could happen if drones started to hit planes? Well, what it would be like if terrorists used them as weapons of mass destruction devices. Quick search on YouTube shows us that we're a lot closer than we think. How close are we? We're going to find out today on theriskadvisor.com.
The Risk Advisor. You're listening to the Risk Advisor podcast. The Risk Advisor highlights topics about the most important personal security and safety issues today. This is for you, your family, and your loved ones. Experts alert to trends, tactics, and techniques used against us. You can be more aware and more informed to stay safe in this ever-changing, complicated place we call life. And now your host, media's go-to guy, Sal Lifriere.
Welcome to theriskadvisor.com. Today we are back with Joe Galasso, a 20-year veteran in law enforcement and founder of JGA Security Solutions, an advisory firm specializing in security and risk management. In his law enforcement career, he served as a special agent in charge of the Criminal Investigation Field Office for the United States Department of Treasury in Boston. Welcome back, Joe.
Thanks, Al.
So, we've talked in the past show, we talked about drones, we talked about some of the problems, some of the issues. Let's talk about, today let's start with the security industry and where they are with the drone problem. Are they recognizing it? Are they trying to do anything about it?
Unfortunately, no, because right now we're not considering it a drone problem. And that's the thing. It's until something happens, I don't think the security industry views it as a problem, quote unquote. It may become a problem, given the fact that there's over 1 million drones that were sold and, only 870,000 were registered. But I don't think the security industry at this point is considering it a problem, even though in the Middle East, in the battlefields of Iraq, Afghanistan, and Syria, drones have been used as weapons.
Well, the military has used them for the longest of times.
That's correct.
And they've had that technology, and it's now something that we're starting to see brought over here. Mm-hmm. Do you think it's something more related to, us just putting our heads in the sand, or are people afraid of technology, or just don't want to put the budget dollars to it?
I think it's people putting their head in the sand. I mean, we spoke about 9/11. 9/11 was a failure of imagination. No one ever expected terrorists to use planes as missiles and fly them into buildings. This is different. This is happening. This is a failure to take action. And until something happens, and I don't want to be, spreading fear, but I fear that until something happens, we're going to be slow to act on this particular situation.
This topic. Wow. To talk about the risk, we spoke with a technical expert about this, Gregory Wobshinak. Greg currently leads the Wireless Solutions Group at AES, Metro New York. It is the largest privately held integration company. The wireless solutions include distributed antenna systems, Wi-Fi, and drone technologies. We're talking about risks. Why are they more prevalent today than they were in the past?
One is the just sheer number of drones out there now than there were previously. The quantity of drones that are in the air is more than doubled in 2 years. 2 years ago there was roughly 600,000 drones in the air, and now there's in excess of 1.2 million.
We're starting to see them being used as weapons, and the threat of them being used as weapons is coming up more and more. Mass destruction.
We've seen them used as weaponized in the Middle East, in the war zones there and stuff. We haven't seen a weaponized threat here in the U.S. yet. I know there was a kid in Connecticut who put a gun on one, was shooting, and they shut him down and put him in jail. But we haven't seen a weaponized threat yet. and that's a good thing.
But it's just a matter of time before that happens.
Unfortunately, I got to agree with that.
Let's talk about the different industries real quick, and how the risks that are posed for each industry. Talk to me about aviation.
The problem with aviation is, the drones, can bounce off the plane. They can get sucked into the engine. They'll take a plane down if it gets sucked into the engine. I can tell you that, between Kennedy and LaGuardia, on a weekly basis, they pull 15 drones off the tarmac.
Wow.
Why? Because there's parks right next to the airport.
Wow.
Is it a nefarious act or just a guy who lost control of his drone? But what it can do to a plane, take a passenger jet out with hundreds of people on it, that's a big issue.
And take it down. Sporting events.
Sporting events we've already seen. There was a couple of years ago a Carolina game. Drones interfered with the game. They had to stop it because it kept buzzing the crowd, and nobody knew for sure what was going on. Was this thing weaponized? Did it have anything on there that could do mass damage? Did it have a bomb? Did it have anthrax? Did it have anything? Nobody knew.
Smuggling.
Been many times prisons throughout the United States where contraband is being dropped in over the walls. And with the relative cost of these things being under $1,000 and with payloads of 4 or 5 pounds, dropping in drugs, tobacco, guns, and giving up the drone, they don't care. They got the contraband in.
Illegal photo and video.
Constantly. It's like
Celebrity peeping
paparazzis, peeping toms, videoing boardroom meetings, getting info prior to stock breaks and whatnot. There's all kinds of information that they can gather through their cameras.
30 seconds, government.
The government. Use or defense. The government uses them and has been using them for decades as in a war zone. We've got kids that sit in Nevada that operate the drones and carry out missions day in and day out.
Wow. Okay. So, Joe, in 30 seconds, tell us what is some of the legislation that might be on the horizon that we may see?
The legislation on the horizon right now is going to deal more with safety and registration. And so I think as drones become even more ubiquitous, the legislation might actually get more relaxed, because right now there's a line of sight requirement for drones. But I think as they become more ubiquitous and they're used and they have more uses, the regulations in some cases might actually get less restrictive to allow them for more applications.
Okay. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk more about the regulatory concerns and how keeping up with the law will be problematic, possibly. Talk to you in a bit.
Advanced Electronic Solutions, Inc., or AES, is a leading privately held systems integrator out of New York. AES's track record of developing solutions for a wide range of customers has given us the opportunity to gain a deep insight into key industries and business sectors. We understand the unique challenges encountered as you move towards ensuring that the systems chosen enable your organization to function effectively and reduce risk. Consequently, we provide a comprehensive array of solutions which include access control, fire and life safety, CCTV, datacom, intercom, distributed antenna systems, auxiliary radio communication systems, IP video, cybersecurity, and proactive health monitoring. If you are interested in finding out more about our solutions provided, please visit www.nyaes.com or email info@nyaes.com.
Workplace violence, terrorism, identity theft, cyberbullying, and stalking. It's not a matter of if they will happen, it's a matter of when. The security world is too complicated to do it alone. You need a security advisor. Call Protective Countermeasures now. Protective Countermeasures has been providing security consulting to Fortune 500 companies for nearly 20 years. Call today, 914-576-8706, protectivecountermeasures.com.
You're watching The Risk Advisor, and we're back with Joe Galasso of JGA Security Solutions talking about drones and the laws surrounding them. Okay, so we're talking about the legislation. We're talking about some regulations that are in place. Some people feel that they're a little bit too intrusive right now. Some people feel that we don't have enough of them. Mm-hmm. So talk to me a little bit about the regulations and where we are.
The regulations are actually, some are going to become more restrictive and some are going to become a lot less restrictive. For instance, the line of sight requirement, as we're able to prove that these things can be operated safely outside of the line of sight, I think that law will be less restrictive. And again, there are so many things on the horizon, beneficial uses of drones, that it's going to require the law to become less restrictive.
Well, for the most part, we've been talking about all the bad things right, that could happen with drones. Let's talk a little bit about beneficial uses. How are they being used?
Okay. Well, besides supporting law enforcement, for surveillance, there are many things that really are going to revolutionize how we do things. Saving lives, natural disasters. Imagine the wildfires in California where you can fly over that area with drones looking for survivors. Infrastructure maintenance. Previously, if you want to inspect bridges, skyscrapers, cranes, that was a manual process. Now you can use drones to fly up around those structures to do your infrastructure maintenance. Delivering packages, as Amazon was talking about doing. That's going to revolutionize.
That I don't understand at all. For the life of me, I can't picture having all of these drones flying around with boxes on them.
Exactly.
I mean, talk about a security risk.
Well,
they're not delivering it to the house.
From a security perspective, that's my nightmare. But from a technology perspective, that's progress. So you have that. Aerial photography.
All right, I got to stop for a second. So on the Amazon delivery, so what do you see as the bad?
Well, obviously, what are you delivering? You can deliver a nice payload of explosives. Currently, if you try to get into a secure facility, that person has to be signed in, registered, right, pre-registered.
Right.
All deliveries are monitored. In many places, all deliveries are screened in a secure mail room before they're sent out. What are we doing with these drones?
I mean, I always had the vision of it's like the Jetsons, where you got all of these things just flying back and forth in front of each other. And
listen, as we both know, progress eventually is going to win out. Security is not going to define the direction we go. Security is going to have to adapt to progress.
How many times has that happened where your client will come to you and say, this is what I want to do, and you say, well, it's not in your best interest, you really shouldn't do it, and they look at you and go, yeah, that's great, now figure it out.
Right.
And you got to figure it out. You got to come up with something to do.
Right. And, things that are less scary, advertising. Instead of having a plane fly over the beach, when you have thousands of people sitting on a beach, you could have a drone pulling a banner. So, I mean, there's just so many things that just your imagination is what limits you.
Somewhere along the line, obviously, the government's got to, Congress is going to have to get involved. Legislation's going to have to be enacted. Mm-hmm. One of the things that, pops up all the times is, on both sides, people say about civil liberties. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I have a right to do this stuff, and I have a right to freedom of speech and how I want to say it. But at the flip side of it, you have this whole concept of an intrusion into people's lives.
Right. Listen, this is the age-old question. We have this debate every day in America. When 9/11 happened, many people thought the Patriot Act was intrusive. Using surveillance, monitoring the internet, monitoring people's phone calls. These were tried and true law enforcement techniques, but they were also an intrusion on your civil liberties. The gun activists, the gun control, folks, they are against all regulation. And I think we're going to run into the same hurdles with the drone lobbyists. They're going to push back, and they're going to want more freedom, not less. So it's something that's going to take place in the courts. And I think it's not an easy solution, just like we're having problems with the other things I mentioned.
Is security become the driving force behind legislation on it, or does it become something more? Does it become an air traffic control issue?
Yeah. Security is not the driving force right now because the people who are going to use these things for bad intention are probably not going to register them anyway. There won't be background checks. So security is really not the driving force. The driving force is going to be the FAA and the FCC.
Well, it's a lot, when you talk about registering them, it's a lot like we had talked about in the prior show about, similar to the gun issue.
That's correct.
Right, a person who's got nefarious intent isn't going to go out and, buy a gun and get a permit, learn how to use it, and then
that's
go hold
correct.
it and go and hold up a bodega.
Right, right.
They're just going to go out and do what they're going to do.
Yeah. Unfortunately, security, Sal, as you know, we usually react to the threat at hand. We don't drive the bus, but we basically come in to clean up the mess.
What kind of a mess do you think we're going to need to actually get the attention of Congress or the legislation?
It could be something as catastrophic as taking down an airliner. It could be a drone flying into a sporting event, even if it's accidental and killing someone. So it doesn't have to be a major event, but unfortunately, someone's going to have to be killed or injured, I think, for people to see that this threat is real. It's in front of us. Again, this stuff's happening. It's just not happening here in the States. But Christopher Wray, the FBI director, has said it's only a matter of time. And because of that, last fall, President Trump signed into law, it gave the ability of the FBI and Department of Homeland Security to take out drones that are threatening government facilities. As a matter of fact, there was an attempted plot against the Pentagon, and that individual is currently serving 17 years in jail. So it's going to take something like that, unfortunately, because people will always say that we're hyping fear, the threat's not real. But until something happens, I think security's going to have a tough time dealing with this. Even within getting resources within your own budget, as you know.
It's tough enough today to just try and get money to a budget, to devices that you actually need and use on a daily basis.
Right.
To try and, to put something like this out is just going to be that much more difficult.
That's correct.
Hopefully in time it all changes. Okay, when we come back, we're going to talk more with Gregory Wabshinak about the technology being deployed in controlling these risks. We'll be right back.
From the files of New York detective Frank Santasola, a riveting murder mystery novel, The Garbage Murders. After an illicit liaison with his mistress, the owner of a private sanitation company in New York is murdered. Enter the life of Detective Frank Miranda, one of a few men in law enforcement to infiltrate the Italian mob and bring to justice some of the biggest names in organized crime history. On Amazon Books in paperback and Kindle editions.
TheGarbageMurders.com.
You're watching The Risk Advisor, and we're back with Gregory Wabshinak. So, Greg, let's talk a little bit about technical compromise. Clients come in, they believe that there's a compromise of some sort. Walk us through the individual steps. Where do you start, and what are the individual things you're going to be doing?
Well, we're gonna have a discussion and decide whether or not whether they have a perceived threat or not. And if they feel they have a threat, it's kind of simple. We run a test site. By running a test site, we use a single sensor on top of the highest point available on their property. If it's a campus setting or if it's an individual building, we just erect it on the roof. And then we let it run for 30, 60, 90 days. And we generate a report and sit back down with them and go over the results. And those results can be, we've seen both. We've seen, you've got a severe drone issue, and now you don't have no drone issue. It was a perceived threat. So, the next step in the process is to getting them to commit to, doing something about it. Okay, you have a drone threat. You've seen that you have a drone threat. We have documentation of your drone threat. Now, what that does, unfortunately for them, is now that their perceived threat is a real threat.
So within that initial report, that 30-day review of what you have, we're looking at, we can go out to, like you said earlier, about a mile out. You can go with the report, but we could also bring it a lot closer. So it's giving us distance as well.
Yeah, we can narrow the field down. Again, depends on the size of the property that we're looking at. So naturally, if you're having a single building, you don't want a mile because it's not doing anything to your building. You want to narrow that field down as much as you possibly can, and we just tone down the sensitivity on the sensors.
And that gives us a report of how many drones have been flown in the area.
Yep.
Is there any false positives that are anything that would set off?
There's no false positives because it's an RF signal that triggers it.
So it's specific to drones.
Yep.
Now, does that include toys? Does that include, the more sophisticated ones? At what level?
It'll cover the more sophisticated ones because they're RF operated. The toys are RF operated as well. Okay, so but they're a little harder to detect on the motion side of it because they're so small. They're the size of a pack of cigarettes, and they can move at 20-something miles an hour. 20-something miles an hour, the size of a pack of cigarettes, is fast. Where the bigger drones, they fly in excess of 40 miles an hour.
And the smaller ones, in essence, the toys that we're talking about, the pack of cigarette size ones, they're not carrying a payload. They're not carrying something that, as we had talked about earlier, they're not carrying any type of.
Some of them can carry a payload of a couple of ounces. But the biggest worry with them is they come equipped with a 4K camera.
Even the small ones.
The small ones.
Okay.
So you got this 4K camera and you can be eavesdropping with it, because it can do lip reading. You do your lip reading off of it. You can be a peeping Tom and have full advantage in New York City. Who would ever think and somebody living on the 10th, 12th, 20th floor would need to worry about blinds?
Sure.
So you have that act. And the toys are not regulated. New York City's no-fly zone doesn't pertain to them. So that you can legally fly outside of any building you want in New York, be photographing anything you want, and you're doing it legally.
Wow. Let's get back to the client for a second. I took you off on a tangent for a bit, but let's get back to the to a client situation. So we got this device that you put up on the roof. We're looking to see if they have a drone issue. We've identified that they do have drones flying that are relatively close, and again, we should probably mention that we're talking about sort of, the industries where this becomes important, like, anything with R&D or pharmaceuticals or anything along those lines.
Sporting venues, prisons, all those things are key to it. The fact that they have payload capabilities, and they can carry contraband and drop them over the wall, or they can carry contraband and they can drop a bomb. And they can drop 4 pounds of plastics in something, and that would create a huge hole in something. Okay. And they can drop chemicals, over a major sporting event, and somebody goes in and drops, anthrax, airborne. What they can do to 65,000 people is really sickening.
Ultimately, we're going to get into that. We've talked about some of that a little bit earlier in the show, but let's get back to, you're at a client, you got the device that's sitting up on the roof. You've identified we got drones that are flying within quarter of a mile, half mile, or near the building. They recognize we have a problem. This is the technical means of compromise. What's the next step that you do?
The next step is, then we have a deeper conversation on how we can protect their property. And how we protect their property, we have teamed up and partnered with a company called D-Drone. And what we'll do is we'll engineer and deploy a larger system that will be given the ability to triangulate and bring us right back down to the operator level. Every unit has got a transmitter and a transceiver, and it's all RF based, and we can triangulate and get back to that user.
So the transmitter part of it is sending the 4K camera images
Signals
back.
Yeah,
sending the signal.
Sending the signal, the direction, giving it all its flight instructions.
And it has GPS capability, so it's telling
many
you.
of them have GPS capability because they can, they can pre-program a flight on them. But that's more towards the commercial side. The individual user doesn't quite get into that yet. The ability to fly it from their smartphone and fly it from the drone perspective. So in other words, they're seeing what the drone sees. They're flying through the camera. They're supposed to be line of sight. Okay, you're supposed to be able to see your drone everywhere it flies, but if you're flying it from your smartphone and you've now changed the whole angle, okay, because now you're flying in the drone, your distance will be cut short because your RF transmission is only good for so long, or for so far, I should say. But what they can see and what they can do is different.
And the technology that you can deploy, knowing that a company is having some technical means of compromise, we can put these sensors up on the building, we can identify the drone. we can track its flight, we can see where it's been, and we can actually even get back to the point of where the person is who's driving it.
Yep. And then we can either send their company's physical security or law enforcement to discuss what this person's doing. And as the laws change and keep up with the threats that are posed by them, we'll be able to deploy security drones, which are a little larger, fly faster, and have the ability to capture an incoming drone.
So that would be the next step in the technology side of it.
It's there. It's just that we can't deploy it yet.
On the civilian side.
On the civilian side.
But on the government and law enforcement side, we have it.
Yep.
That's pretty interesting. Okay. Well, thank you for coming in today. We really appreciate it. I'd also like to thank Joe Galasso for also being with us today. We'd like to remind you, if you have a question or a comment, please write us at guest@theriskadvisor.com. You can follow us on our social media accounts, and you can find all of those links at the riskadvisor.com website. We'd like to thank you again for watching, and we hope to tune in next week. Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed this show. If you have any questions, would like to appear on the program, or recommend a guest, contact us at theriskadvisor.com. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. View and listen to us on iTunes, iHeartRadio, YouTube, and Roku TV. Tune in live on various local radio stations. Find links to all of these and listen to past shows at theriskadvisor.com. Thank you for listening. Stay safe and join us again next week for another episode of The Risk Advisor.